Right now, I'm challenging myself to see if I can make 128 Regulation H teams that are each different from one another over the course of 128 days. Why 128, you might ask? At the end of the 128 days, we're going to do something special where we battle every team against each other in a single elimination bracket to see which team emerges on top. There will be some competitively strong teams, there will be some gimmick teams, and there will be some probably a good number of goofs and gaffs in there, so if you want to follow through to the end, subscribe so that you can keep up with each day. But without further ado, let's move on to day 73. Alright everybody, welcome back to another video, and in today's video we are going to be going over what was initially a Gliscor-centric team, but is actually becoming like a half Gliscor, half Hitmonlee team, based on the replays that I have brought around, and also I don't think we're going to use Hitmonlee again. But I wanted to use Gliscor since choice band Gliscor is a thing that's been popular, so I made a choice band Gliscor set that's not too complicated. And then I put side terrain on it, and then Hitmonlee is a good Pokemon for side terrain, because you usually see Sneasler for your Unburdened, but Hitmonlee does have a little bit to stand out from Sneasler, so we'll get to that whenever we talk about Hitmonlee. But first up, we have the Gliscor with the choice band, which is going to increase our attack by 1.5 times. And on Gliscor, we get the Stab Dual Wing Beat, which I've said many times during this video is that it's hard to get good stab flying type damage, but we can use the Stab Dual Wing Beat on Gliscor in order to get that to hit things like Sneasler is the big one in the format. But with Gliscor, we also get a really good stab ground Earthquake, since Garchomp was mainly the Earthquake Pokemon, but Garchomp has kind of fallen off a bit. But Gliscor is able to carve out a bit of a niche for itself with the Earthquake, and we're also Terra Ground to boost the power of our Earthquake, as this team mostly wants to set Gliscor up so that it is just outgoing everything with Earthquake. And then just for two add-on moves, we have the Knockoff to get rid of opponent items, and we also have the U-Turn in case we need to pivot out with Gliscor into another Pokemon. And Gliscor won't be getting intimidated or having its attack dropped at all by attack drops with the Hyper Cutter ability, which prevents it. And normally when you see Gliscor, it is the Poison Heal, so if you're playing this in like a closed team shape format, you have a better ability to surprise your opponent with the Hyper Cutter ability. And on Gliscor, we are max speed, except for one speed point is missing because I wanted it to underspeed our Indeedee, but there's really not a lot of Pokemon that are at Gliscor's speed tier. They're usually like 167, because that's like Tauros and Volcarona's max speed, and it's important to hit that speed tier. But Gliscor is one of those Pokemon where it has a really nice defense stat, and as long as we are dodging the special attacks going into Gliscor's spot, Gliscor has the ability to be both fast and tanky and hit hard, which is crazy when you think about it. Coming up next, we got Hydreigon, and Hydreigon is just another heavy hitter I slotted on here, mostly because we're Levitate, so that way we can dodge Gliscor's Earthquake, but we also deal really good damage into Pokemon that Gliscor is weak to, like water types and, well, not ice types. We can't handle the ice types on Hydreigon, but everything else can handle ice types pretty much. But Hydreigon is a really nice check to Basculegion, who we have our own Basculegion to also check Basculegion, but our goal is to be throwing out those absolute Haymaker Draco Meteors, and to a less extent Dark Pulses that just do really good stab damage. And on this Hydreigon, we have the ability to go Terra Poison specifically for hitting Fairy types a little bit better, since Fairy types directly counter Hydreigon, and we don't have any resistances on this team outside of Terra, so it's nice to just have that Terra Poison, Terra Blast to hit Fairy types, as well as we have the Earth Power for hitting things like Rock types that we can't hit with Gliscor. Next up, we got our speed control, which is Talonflame, and this is a pretty simple Talonflame set, as we're going to be running the Tailwind and the Dual Wing Beat, which is nice to have Dual Wing Beat to get other sashes whenever we don't have like Gliscor on the field. But both the Tailwind and Dual Wing Beat are going to have their priority increased by our Gale Wind, which means that whenever we are at full health, we are going to have priority, which is an anti-synergy with Indeedee, since Indeedee is going to be setting up Psychic Terrain. However, if we can manage to damage ourselves with a Flare Blitz first, then we can click Dual Wing Beat into other Pokemon, and Gliscor always has the Dual Wing Beat that's not priority in case we need to lead super good flying type damage on turn 1. We can count on Talonflame for maybe on the second turn or after we set up a Tailwind, or Talonflame will just be dead and we can bring in a different Pokemon. Not too much of a difference there, but we also have the Will-O-Wisp on Talonflame just for making it so that Gliscor is already pretty defense tanky, but we can even further reduce the attack potential of the opponent Pokemon. And we're Cover Cloak so that we're dodging Fake Outs, which does cause our abilities to unactivate, but it's better than nothing. And also Terra Grass, mostly just to dodge the powder moves, but it also makes us not weak to rock, which is great. Next up, we got Indeedee, and this is pretty much just a full offense Indeedee with the Expanding Force, Dazzling Gleam, and Terra Blast, as we are the Terra male Indeedee, which means that we have Expanding Force, which the female does not. And we are Focus Sash on Indeedee, so that way we can always take at least one hit, and with the Terra Blast, we can use it normally since we are a normal normally, get it? But we can use it just any time that we want because we are a normal type, so we get Stab on the Terra Blast just in case we need a single target attack. But if we go for the Terra Fighting, then we get Terra Fighting Terra Blast, which is also pretty good. Next up, we have the co-star of the show here, Hitmonlee, and as I mentioned before, Hitmonlee is an unburdened Pokemon, which means that whenever we lose our item, our speed is going to be doubled, and we are Psychic Seed, so that way we can immediately get that double speed boost on turn 1 if we lead Indeedee and Hitmonlee together. And on this Hitmonlee, we're going to be using some powerful moves for our Close Combat, which is our Stab Fighting type move, and also Blaze Kick is a bit of a nice tech, as it does have a higher crit ratio for scenarios where we would need that, but also 10% chance to burn can come up, but the 90% accuracy will definitely get you killed sometimes. But we also have the Rock Tomb on Hitmonlee, which means that Hitmonlee is another form of speed control outside of Talonflame, and can even kind of beat Talonflame in some scenarios if we're going to go for that Terra Rock. But the extra speed control is nice because not only does it lower the opponent's speed, it also gives us a guaranteed way to break Focus Sash since nothing in the game is immune to the Rock Tomb. And lastly on Hitmonlee, we have the Wide Guard, mostly for just preventing Hitmonlee from taking the Earthquake from Gliscor, but I mean, Wide Guard is always good for just preventing any kind of spread damage that may come out. And lastly, we have Basculegion, just because it's a nice Pokemon to slot on, because it gives us some move typings that we didn't have previously, and our Basculegion is going to be Wave Crashing and Flip Turning for good water type damage, and then whenever it's the last Pokemon in the game, we can get that really strong Last Respects, because it adds 50 base power onto Last Respects for each of our Pokemon that is dead. And lastly, I just decided to put on Terra Blast for Terra Grass, because we don't have any grass type damage on anywhere else on this team, and we are Scarf Adaptability since we're not setting any of our own rain in any way, and it allows us to use Basculegion outside of rain. But yeah, that's the basic gist of the team. Let's get into some battles. Alright, so first up, they have pretty standard rain team with Pelipper, Archaludon, and Basculegion, and then they have their two supports and the Amogus and Incineroar, and the Maushold could either be attack or a support depending on what set it is, but it is more than likely also a support set based on the fact that they have Archaludon. They can just side pop bomb into Archaludon. So battle starts down, opponent leads Incineroar and their Basculegion, as we lead our Hydreigon and Talonflame, so pretty decent lead for us here. They decide to immediately Terra Water their Basculegion though, as Talonflame at least gets up the Tailwind here, and they just Wave Crash into Talonflame, taking it out of the game, but we have our Tailwind up, so Talonflame at least gets to do its job. We can bring in Hitmonlee here, we can double threaten KOs here with both the Close Combat into Incineroar and the Draco into Basculegion, but Basculegion is not a choice item, it looks like, so it gets to protect as we take down Incineroar. I decide to bring in Indeedee here, because I thought the Basculegion might decide to Aqua Jet into Indeedee, but that did not happen, so we just get to Draco Meteor into Basculegion, and reveal our Caledon in the back, and we get rid of our Spatak drop to bring in Hitmonlee with the Spidef buff here, and we get the free Expanding Force into both slots. Pelipper not going for the Wide Guard, as Hitmonlee takes the Flash Cannon real good, as Indeedee takes the Hurricane not real good, but it already had taken some hits, so it's justifiable. We just get to Rock Tomb into Pelipper, and we get to Draco Meteor into our Archaludon to finish it out, as sometimes the Archaludons will run Protect, so I didn't want to have to slot like Draco Meteor into Pelipper, since that's the more likely one to miss, and we can always just Close Combat the Archaludon, since even if they Electro Shot it into Hitmonlee, I don't think that would take out Hitmonlee based on how much damage the Flash Cannon did. Here we have a pretty interesting spread of mons, where they have a lot of fast offense mons in Meowscarada, Sneasler, and the Goldango, but they have like their Murkrow and Amogus for their support, and Primarina it's definitely tanky. Primarina's kind of fallen off more recently in the format, but it's still a strong staple by all means. So we lead Hitmonlee and Talonflame here, as the opponent leads Meowscarada and Primarina, and I was thinking, what was I thinking? I was thinking that I wanted to get Indeedee here to immediately activate the Psychic Seed on Hitmonlee, since they would probably go for the Water type move on Primarina, and then maybe protect Meowscarada or do something kind of crazy with Meowscarada. But we get the speed boost with Hitmonlee with the special defense boost, and they Terra Water their Primarina, and we get the Blaze Kick into Meowscarada. But Meowscarada is heckin' Akaberry, which is just so random. Like, if I clicked Close Combat into it, it would have just died in one hit. But Meowscarada not even being sashed there, so the fact that I went for Blaze Kick to maintain the special defense boost instead of going for close combat, and the chance to maybe burn the Meowscarada through the focus sash was absolutely mute there, but as we'll see, the Meowscarada goes for U-turn, but we resist it with Hitmonlee, which is nice, and they go out to Sneasler, and they do go for the Hyper Voice, so Hitmonlee is going to live it, and indeed he lives it pretty well. They decide to protect Sneasler here, which is unfortunate because we went for the Rock Tomb to try and break its sash, but also to make it slower than Indeedee. So Primarina just gets to go for the Hyper Voice and KO both Pokemon on the field. But now we get to bring in Gliscor and Talonflame again, and we get to Tailwind with Talonflame, and we get the Earthquake off, and the Sneasler was in fact sashed, so the Sneasler is going to get off and attack here. And they Dire Claw, and they get the Paralysis into Gliscor, which is the one that, I mean, Sleep would have been the worst one, but here we can at least Terra Grass Talonflame to Flare Blitz into the Sneasler, and then the Amoonguss couldn't redirect the Talonflame or put it to sleep. And we still have Tailwind up, so we get to Flare Blitz into Meowscarada since it no longer holds the Aqua Berry, and the Earthquake is gonna hit Talonflame, but it also chips Amoonguss. But at this point, Talonflame is the actual end game, so the opponent sees that they can't win the end game with just Amoonguss anymore. Up next, we got another Pelipper Arc Bascu Legion Rain team, but this time they have Blastoise, and I did see that there was a Blastoise that did kind of well at a recent regional that was like Shell Smash Water Spout, I believe. We get Hitmonlee and Hydreigon in here to maybe turn one pressure the Blastoise into doing something different, and they do lead Blastoise and Rillaboom, so I just swap Indeedee here so that they can't fake out and then go for the Shell Smash, and we Rock Tomb in order to theoretically get rid of their White Herb here. But they tried fake outing with Blastoise, which, I mean, is perfectly acceptable, but we speed drop them, but they're not White Herb. They're actually Swords Dance Rillaboom, which puts this game a little bit at risk. Tried Blaze Kicking the Rillaboom there just to deal super effective damage, and then getting the Expanding Force off. But Blastoise seems to be more defensive as it goes for the Young and into Hitmonlee. And we just close combat Rillaboom since it could have Terrified there theoretically, and then Expanding Force is going to finish off Rillaboom, but not Blastoise, so Blastoise gets the flip turn into Hitmonlee to hit us while we have a defense drop, and they get to bring in Pelipper here just fine, as they also bring back Blastoise, and Pelipper is going to Wide Guard here, but I predicted that they might Wide Guard, so we went for the Terra Blast in order to take out Blastoise on this turn, as they bring in the Archaludon, and they Wide Guard with Pelipper again, but Hitmonlee gets the one-turn Wake Up in order to get the Rock Slide into Pelipper, and then Terra Blast is going to be able to take out Pelipper here, as Archaludon is the last one left on the field and clicks Electro Shot into Indeedee, but Indeedee is sashed, so even if we hadn't gotten that one-turn Wake Up with Hitmonlee there, it would have been super fine if it woke up this turn, because we would have Terra Blasted the Pelipper probably to the point where it would have been too KOable, and then Hitmonlee would just click Close Combat on this turn, and we still have the Hydreigon in the back, despite what our fourth Pokemon was. I believe it was Bascu Legion in the back to handle the Archaludon. So we click Close Combat, and of course Archaludon's health goes way down, and we get to finish off the Archaludon with just a little Dazzling Gleam sprinkled on top. We have a pretty interesting team where they have the Galarian Weezing, but not necessarily any of the Pokemon that like to play along with Galarian Weezing. Like, the only thing that I really think this team benefits from if they're neutralizing gas is having, like, Ability Shield on the Gyarados. So I perhaps kind of overpredicted that the Galarian Weezing is going to come, since a lot of my Pokemon depend on their abilities, especially like Indeedee and Hitmonlee. So we just lead Gliscor and Talonflame, who kind of less depend on their abilities, and we do in fact ignore the Intimidate with our Hyper Cutter. So we swap in Indeedee here, and I try Will-O-Wisping the Garchomp, seeing as I thought they were going to attack the Gliscor spot, since it felt pretty free to just Tailwind and then attack with Gliscor there. But they instead decide to Swords Dance with their Garchomp and then Waterfall into Talonflame, and Talonflame does not, unfortunately, catch the Waterfall from Gyarados. But now we can bring Gliscor back, and we're losing the speed control, but they decide to Dragon Claw into Indeedee. So Indeedee at least gets to Expanding Force here, and Gliscor heckin' whiffs the Dual Wing Beat and then catches an Ice Fang, which is not ideal. We protect with Indeedee here to maybe see if Gliscor can get off and attack, but they protect with Gyarados in case Gliscor protected here, and the Garchomp is just going to take out Gliscor. But Garchomp is slowly chipping itself away, and we finish it off with the Last Respects, and Expanding Force is going to finish off the Gyarados here. So now it's just the two Pokemon that they have in the back, and it is Volcarona and Amoonguss. And Volcarona is probably going to have a real difficult time trying to deal with Sorry, that last respects into Amogus caught me a little off guard. I wasn't expecting that, but Volcarona is probably going to have a difficult time dealing with Basculegion any way that you put it, so we just get to land those 2 last respects while they're powered up by our adaptability into Volcarona and Amogus to end the game there. Here we have what I think was actually the team that inspired my team with the choice band Gliscor. Actually, I think the other team was an Alolan Ninetales team now that I think about it. But I mean, you can see Gliscor is popular. It's popping up all over the place. So we lead Hitmonlee and Indeedee here to immediately get up our terrain, and they lead Gliscor and Talonflame, which is pretty nice for us. Hitmonlee gets this def boost here. And we have Hitmonlee wide guard so that the Indeedee can start throwing out attacks. Since Gliscor does in fact throw out the Earthquake whenever both of my Pokemon are Earthquakeable. And we get good expanding force damage into both. And here is where I should have Terra Rocked Hitmonlee, seeing as it was perfectly possible for Talonflame to use the Brave Bird to attack into Hitmonlee in order to get rid of the wide guard. I thought Hitmonlee might live it, but I'm not that experienced with Hitmonlee, so I thought it had more defense than that, but not enough apparently. So Hitmonlee just gets clapped here, and it would be really nice to have Hitmonlee specifically here because we could use it to outspeed Tyranitar, maybe pressure Tyranitar, or just wide guard, and then Gholdengo can never hit the Indeedee here because it's probably Make It Rain and then Ghost type moves, and since we're a normal type, we can make ourselves immune to the Ghost type moves, and wide guard will block that Make It Rain. But we get to bring in Gliscor here, and it's not all bad. We just protected the Indeedee here, and Gholdengo gets the Make It Rain, and Gliscor unfortunately does not take it, which is not what I was quite expecting. Knockoff tries to come out into Indeedee, but we get late game Basculegion here, but Basculegion can take the Make It Rain as it looks like the opponent is Specs Gholdengo. But we Last Respects into Tyranitar, but that doesn't do enough damage into Tyranitar, unfortunately. And Expanding Force comes out into both here. So even if I think what the play I could have gone for was using Basculegion to attack Gholdengo and then trying the single target Expanding Force into Tyranitar instead. But they still have a pretty decent Gliscor here, which does get taken out by the Expanding Force. The Expanding Force is not enough to finish off Gholdengo, so Gholdengo is going to be the last Pokemon on the field. So I think I definitely did not play optimally this game, and that there were a lot better choices that I could have made. Like, I didn't even use Terra this game, I don't think, but there was definitely opportunities where using Terra would have kept up my momentum. And lastly, we have a team here that looks like, unless a Pokemon is Choice Scarf here, Gliscor just gets to naturally outspeed every single one of these Pokemon, which is epic. We don't have to worry about setting up Tailwind to start doing damage with Gliscor. They do, however, have the Rillaboom, which stops our Earthquake a little bit, so we're going to have to use Indeedee to kind of negate their grassy terrain. So we get Basculegion and Hydreigon here, as I want to save Gliscor for the back, as Incineroar comes in, pressuring Freak Out, and Glimmer is just doing Glimmer things. We get Flip Turn into Incineroar and bringing in Indeedee here, as we get Earth Power into Glimmer, but Glimmer is Sash, so it gets to survive the turns, but Death Drop doesn't matter. And Glimmer actually has Dazzling Gleam, which is pretty not great for Hydreigon here, as they full on just decided to knock off into Indeedee. So we bring in Basculegion unintimidated, but they get to bring in Rillaboom here, and now they have terrain control for the rest of the game. And Wave Crash is going to do decent damage to Primarina, even though Primarina resists it. And Earth Power, unfortunately, isn't going to get to pick off the Rillaboom here. So I bring in Gliscor here, seeing as they were probably going to Grassy Glide, and they do Grassy Glide, and Gliscor takes it okay. We Earth Power Primarina, try and deal good damage, and thankfully they just Moonblasted the Hydreigon here. But now it is Basculegion and Gliscor versus the world, as Basculegion is going to get to use its Terra Grass. And they do Grassy Glide into Basculegion. We try to Wave Crash in order to take out Primarina. And Dual Wing Beat looks like it's going to take out Rillaboom, but Rillaboom is actually Agua Berry, so it gets to live on 3%. Which is not great, but it's not the worst since Rillaboom can't really take anything with the Grassy Glide. And Incineroar comes in and lays down an Intimidate into one of our Pokemon, and it looks like they decide to sack Glimmer here as Wave Crash takes down Incineroar for the Predict. And Dual Wing Beat thankfully does not miss Glimmer, as we really need all of Gliscor's Dual Wing Beats to land from this point on. And on this next turn, I think I make a bit of a misplay, which I should just double into the Rillaboom here. Kind of, I don't know, hard to tell what I should have done, but they get to U-turn at Basculegion, which takes it out here. So now I have to live at least one attack, but they no longer have their grass boosted attacks, but they Terra Grass to kind of make up for that. And Grassy Glide does do some damage to Gliscor, but Gliscor thankfully lands the last Dual Wing Beat in order to end the game there. Yeah, that was the Gliscor / Hitmonlee team, as I feel like both of these Pokemon are pretty essential for each other, because Hitmonlee gets to be super fast and then maybe provide some speed control whenever Indeedee has up the terrain, and Indeedee resetting the terrain allows the Gliscor to do big damage with the Earthquake, since grassy terrain won't be negating it. But Gliscor also doesn't have any way for its own speed control to work, but it also works with like every Pokemon in this team pretty much. But thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked it, maybe consider leaving a like on the video, and even consider subscribing, because both of those things would help me out an absolute ton, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you.